What up, y'all? Tina here. Let's get into the Jonathan Majors trial, day 8. This includes the explosive text messages as well as the sloppy police work done by the officers on scene. Now, before we get into this video, I want to set the right expectation. This video is going to be difficult and may be triggering to some people. If you've suffered domestic violence, please take care of yourself. You may not need to move forward in watching this video. When I'm going over the legal stuff, please don't take it as if I'm defending either him or her. Obviously, this is a very toxic situation for the both of them. But when I'm talking about the case and the legalities of it, please don't take it as if I'm disregarding any victims of domestic violence, either male or female. We're just talking about the law. All right, let's get it. Jonathan Majors' lawyer, Priya Chaudhry. Now, I've been critical of Priya since the start, and I'm not going to spend this video beating up on her. But she fumbled the ball big time today. Let's explain. Before this trial started, the prosecution wanted to use 3 things in this case. They wanted to bring in his ex-girlfriends to testify about his background. They also wanted to bring in an incident that happened in London between Jonathan and Grace, and the police were involved. Also wanted to bring in these text messages that were introduced today. Priya fought so hard to keep all 3 of those events excluded from the trial. The judge said it's sealed, we're not bringing it in. But then eventually, today, she accidentally opened the door to allow the prosecution to use them. I just couldn't believe it. We just saw this with the Tory Lanez trial. His lawyers did the same exact thing. And people keep wondering why I say this Jonathan Majors case is very parallel to Tory versus Meg. It's because we're seeing a lot of the same similarities and coincidences and some of the same mistakes being made. It's just amazing to me. If you watch my past 2 videos, especially on day 6, I talked about how Priya just randomly asked Grace, hey, don't you have an ex who unalived himself? And it's reported at the time the judge said, be careful, you bringing up her exes. Now, don't start feeling a type of way if the prosecution wants to bring in his exes. That's pretty much what he kind of alluded to. He didn't say those exact words, but he did warn her. Then we get to day 7 and she's just pounding on Grace, pounding on her. She's making her cry. She's running out of the courtroom 3 and 4 times. So Priya is coming off very assertive, and that might work in most cases. So today, she opened up, still drilling on Grace. She asked her, what happened when the police showed up? Why did you tell the police you didn't remember how you got injured? So at this point, the judge is looking at her like, all right, now, Priya, you know we got these incriminating text messages sealed up in the tuck. Are you sure you want to go down this lane? Do you really want to walk this path of asking Grace why she acted obtuse when the police showed up? So the prosecution comes up behind Priya and says, Grace, why didn't you tell them how you got hurt? She said, I was scared of the consequences. I wanted to protect him. Prosecution then puts the messages on the Summer Jam screen. They put the messages on the biggest IMAX screen you could ever see. I'm like, oh my God. They say, ladies and gentlemen. Boy, it sounded like a wrestling match. Nah, I'm exaggerating, but they pretty much was like, hey, y'all, back in September in 2022, Grace had a similar incident where she had an injury to her head, and she wanted to go to the doctor, so she texted Jonathan Majors. So they're pretty much insinuating that Jonathan Majors and Grace got into it, and this is what Jonathan texted her back. I fear you have no perspective of what could happen if you go to the hospital. They will ask us questions, as I don't think you actually can protect us. It could lead to investigation even if you do lie and they suspect something. Grace said, I will tell the doctor I bumped my head. I'm going to give it 1 more day, but I can't sleep and I need some stronger painkillers. Why would I tell them what really happened between us when it's clear I want to be with you? So this is where things can be kind of confusing if you're really following the case and not just looking at the headlines. The text messages that were presented to the jury was heavily redacted. So we don't know the full context or conversation or story of even what's going on between these 2. Now, this is hypothetical. This is me playing devil's advocate. It's possible this is the same incident that was previously reported a couple days ago when she said she brought some people home and he got so mad, he threw something against the wall. It's possible that he threw like a glass cup against the wall or something and it could have ricocheted and cut her and she wanted to go to the doctor. Or it's possible, did he just attack her and hit her in the head? Or could it be vice versa, that she attacked him and he pushed her down and then she hit her head? It's so many possibilities, and we just don't know what these text messages mean based in these singular contexts that we're seeing them in. We don't know what this is about, and this case is sealed. But I must admit, when she's trying to go to the hospital, he's obviously trying to persuade her not to go. He texted her, "Last night I considered taking my life versus coming home. I need love too, or maybe I'm such a monster and a horrible man I don't deserve it, and I should just unalive myself. In this way, my existence is miserable. I want to die." Jabari replied, "I will not go to the doctor if you don't feel safe with me doing so, or don't trust me to. I promise you I would never mention you but understand your fear." So, how this event in London of 2022 ties into this current trial from March of this year is the prosecution is laying the foundation that the reason she didn't want to tell the EMTs what really happened is because she wanted to protect him. Because the last time an incident like this happened, he threatened to unalive himself. In addition to, she also thought she was going to ruin her career. So when Priya and the prosecution said, "Why didn't you just tell the EMTs what really happened? Why did you say, I don't know?" Those text messages are laying the foundation that I didn't want to tell them what really happened because I wanted to protect him. So that's the big headline. That's the smoking gun that unfortunately his lawyer pulled the trigger on. If she would have never kept pushing the issue, we would have never saw those text messages. Hey man, she got to give him a discount. If she wins this case or if she loses this case, she has to give him a discount because those text messages may have just ruined his whole career. And it's a wild that your own lawyer may have put the nail in the coffin. That's crazy. That is insane. I could talk for hours and hours about those text messages and Priya, but let's get to the rest of day 8. So Danny Does Law was back at trial today, so I'm going to pull her page up and go over some of the things that she talked about. The prosecution called their third witness to the stand, Holly Blakely. Her and Grace are close friends, and they're also professional associates. She's a choreographer as well. She pretty much stated when she first met Jonathan, he was nice, he was caring, he was sweet, but over time, she did notice that she started seeing Grace less and less. Grace stopped working as much, and then she said she did notice Grace started losing a lot of weight. The night of the incident, Holly said she was on and off the phone with Grace for hours throughout the whole night. She said she had never seen Grace like this before. She was crying, she was upset, there was periods where they were in constant contact. Priya comes up and now she's cross-examining her. She found out that the DA is actually paying for her flight, her food, her expenses, for Grace and Holly to, come over here and testify because they're both from the UK. Priya is trying to lay the framework, and she's been doing this throughout the trial, that maybe the DA cut a deal with Grace to come back to New York to testify, and maybe they wouldn't prosecute charges against her. Priya asked her about the night of the incident. We're talking about Holly, the best friend. She said at times Grace wasn't making much sense. She was hysterical, half asleep. She also told Holly she didn't know exactly how she got her injuries. Holly stated it took her a very long time to get Grace to leave. Now, we don't know if Holly is saying that she persuaded her to leave the apartment or to leave the relationship. Holly said Grace also admitted that she got real scrappy with Jonathan. This is why this case is so tough, because you have so many times of Grace admitting that she's either fighting Jonathan, getting scrappy with him, chasing after him, snatching his phone. She's admitted so many times that she has been physical with him. They pretty much let Holly go and moved on to the fourth witness. All right, so the prosecution was supposed to call the fourth witness today, which was the driver. Now, we all thought the driver was going to be the main critical witness in this case because he was the only one who was involved with Jonathan and Grace. But today, we found out the driver speaks a foreign language and he's going to need a translator. So we didn't get to hear from the driver today. So hopefully, they may have his translator ready to go on Monday. Prosecution then wrapped up with calling the final witness, Officer Brendan. All right, Brendan does admit that Jonathan was the one that called 911. He also stated that Jonathan met him in the lobby, and he was also the one that took him up the stairs to show him that Grace was in the closet unconscious. Prosecution asked Brendan, How was Grace's personality? He said, foggy, speech was slow. Listen to me. When you mix alcohol and sleeping pills together, your brain is going to be very loopy. Brendan said he didn't really notice any injuries on first take. He eventually helped her sit up, and she whispered to him that she didn't want Jonathan in the room. Once again, this is where the contradiction comes in, because a couple hours before, you were texting him demanding that he comes home, and then hours before that, you was chasing after him. So what has changed that now you're so fearful that he's home? Now you're scared and you don't want to be around him. Brendan said he asked her 5 or 10 times what happened, and she couldn't really tell him. Everything was fuzzy with her recollection. Brendan's sergeant eventually shows up to the scene, and you see in the video his sergeant talking to Grace and gesturing at her neck. Now, if you recall when all of this happened, the headlines read, Jonathan Majors charged with strangulation of his ex-girlfriend. That charge was dropped and completely thrown out, and now we know why. We know the choking never happened, but you have police officers on the scene trying to guess and assume that Jonathan Majors did that to her. Brendan also admitted that Grace never used the word strangulation ever. So now Priya is cross-examining Brendan, and nobody is talking about this big key thing because the text messages overshadowed it. Follow this timeline. Priya said that Grace texted Holly at 11:07 a.m. Brendan said he arrived on the scene at 11:20 a.m., which means between 11:07 and 11:15-ish, Jonathan Majors was at the door trying to get in. So she either passed out really fast after texting her friend, or was this a performance that she passed out? Because if she texts her friend at 11:07, Jonathan probably showed up about 11:10, 11:15. I'm sure he knocked on the door and tried to get in. So that's a very quick time to go from texting someone to be completely unconscious. We also found out that Brendan pretty much insinuated to Grace, did he hurt your finger? She said, I guess so. So Priya is now painting a picture that the police has been leading her to put these injuries on Jonathan. We also found that he wrote on the paperwork that she had a laceration behind her eye. Priya asked, did you write this in your document? He said, yes, I wrote it. But now we found out it wasn't true. She never had a laceration behind her eye. He also wrote that the incident took place at the apartment, but we all know that the incident took place inside the Escalade, so it was some sloppy police work, man. But this is where racial bias and prejudices come into play, right? Because the police officer automatically assumed that the assault took place at the home, just like he automatically assumed Jonathan Majors did it because he had no proof, because Grace kept saying, I don't know. Not to mention, he even fabricated a laceration on her eye that never happened. It never took place, and he put it in his paperwork. And last but not least, there was a sergeant on the scene who created this whole strangulation narrative that never happened. And it's a shame that this isn't the headlines, but the text messages from 2022 are the bombshells. We should at least have Co-BombShells, right? It should be Jonathan Majors sends explosive text messages, and we should also see police officers handled the Grace Jabari situation very sloppy. We should have both of those headlines, not just the text messages. So, what do y'all think about the text messages and also the sloppy police work? Leave your comments below, and once again, thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate all my new subscribers, all the old ones for rocking with me from the beginning. Thanks for hanging out with me, and follow if you want to know more information about the Jonathan Majors trial, the A$AP Rocky trial. I might cover a little Diddy. I might cover a little YNW Melly, but thanks for hanging out with me, guys. Peace.